My daughter-in-law grabbed my hand so hard I nearly lost my balance. She looked at my engagement ring, the same ring my late husband placed on my finger 45 years ago, and said, "This diamond is wasted on your wrinkled hands. I'll wear it better." Before I could respond, she yanked it off and laughed. My own son stood beside her and laughed too, as if humiliating me was a joke we were all supposed to enjoy. That ring wasn't just jewelry. It was the last piece of my husband I had left. For 3 days, I cried quietly in my room, praying he could hear me from heaven. But when she took the ring to get it resized, the jeweler's face went pale the moment he saw it. What he discovered inside that ring changed everything, not just for me, but for my entire family. Before I tell you what he found, let me take you back to where this all began. If someone tried to strip away your last memory of the person you loved most, would you stay silent or stand up? Comment where you're watching from and subscribe. This story might be closer to real life than you think. My name is Margaret Hale. I am 68 years old, and for most of my life, I was blessed with a loving husband, James, who made me feel like the most cherished woman on earth. He wasn't wealthy when he proposed. The engagement ring he gave me wasn't extravagant, but it was beautiful, a single diamond on a gold band, engraved with our initials on the inside. He once told me, "This ring is a promise that no matter what happens in this world, you will never be unloved." He passed away unexpectedly 2 years ago, and ever since then, I have worn that ring every day as a reminder that I was once deeply loved, and that love still lives in the memories we built together. After his passing, my son, Eric, and his wife, Vanessa, insisted I move in with them. Eric told me it was for my safety and comfort. I believed him. I moved into the guest room and did everything I could to be helpful. I cooked dinner when Vanessa worked late. I packed lunches for my granddaughter, Lily. I folded laundry and watered the plants. I never complained, even when Vanessa began rearranging my belongings without asking. At first, it was small things. She said my framed photos made the house look old-fashioned. Then she started making comments about my ring. "Why do older women cling to jewelry like it keeps them young?" she once said with a smirk. I laughed it off until the day she said, in front of a friend, "Let's be honest, when she dies, I'll get the ring anyway." That was the first time I felt something shift. My son, Eric, didn't defend me. He shrugged and said, "It's just a ring." But it wasn't just a ring. It was the symbol of the life I built from nothing with the man who loved me unconditionally. I tried to ignore the disrespect, telling myself my son must be under stress. But then came the moment that changed everything. Vanessa didn't just insult me. She decided to take what she believed was already hers. And in that moment, she had no idea that the ring she tried to steal was holding a secret that would make her regret ever touching it. The day Vanessa ripped my engagement ring off my finger was the day I realized I was no longer being seen as family, but as an obstacle standing in the way of someone else's greed. She did it casually, without shame, as if she were rearranging furniture. We were all sitting in the living room after dinner when she suddenly stood up, walked over to me and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "You don't need this anymore. It belongs to the next generation." Her fingers dug into my knuckles as she wrenched the ring from my hand. I gasped in pain, not from the physical force, but from the shock that someone I called daughter-in-law would show me such disrespect. I looked over at my son, Eric, praying he would say something, anything, in my defense. But he only smirked and said, "Come on, Mom, don't be dramatic. Vanessa just wants to keep it safe." Safe, as if I were the threat, as if my age had made me incapable of protecting what was rightfully mine. I felt my heart sink as Vanessa slipped the ring onto her finger and twirled it proudly in the light. "Wow," she said with a laugh. "See how it shines on youthful hands?" I excused myself and went to my room, where I finally let the tears fall. I held my left hand against my chest, staring at the faint indentation where the ring had been for 45 years. That night, I could barely sleep. I kept hearing my husband's voice in my memory saying, "This ring is a symbol. It belongs to the one my heart belongs to, forever." I woke up the next morning to Vanessa tapping on my door. "I'm taking the ring to get resized," she announced without waiting for permission. "It's loose on me, and I don't want it to fall off." She laughed as she left the room. I felt like my late husband was being erased, piece by piece. I walked down the hallway to find Eric in the kitchen. I tried once more to reason with him. I said, "Eric, that ring is part of your father's memory. It is not yours to give away." He didn't even look up from his coffee. He said, "Mom, you never let go of things. This is for the best. Vanessa will inherit it anyway." It was at that moment I realized I was alone in that house. Not because I had no family, but because my family had chosen convenience over respect. For the next 2 days, Vanessa bragged to her friends about finally getting the ring that should have been hers all along. She said things like, "Why let it rot in an old jewelry box when it can be worn the way it was meant to?" I stayed silent, but inside me something was changing. I was no longer just grieving. I was awakening. On the 3rd day, Vanessa returned from the jeweler, but this time, her usual smug smile was gone. She walked into the house quietly, eyes wide, face pale. She clutched the ring in her hand like it had burned her. She passed me without a word and went straight to Eric, pulling him into the office and shutting the door. Their voices rose in panic. I heard Vanessa say, "We have to fix this. We need to get control now before she finds out." Those words sent a chill through my bones. Fix what? Find out what? That evening at dinner, neither of them could make eye contact with me. Vanessa kept her hands hidden under the table. My granddaughter Lily noticed something was wrong and whispered to me, "Grandma, something scared them. I saw Mom crying when she came home." That night, when the house was quiet, I heard Vanessa on the phone in the hallway whispering to someone. I heard her say, "He said the ring isn't what we thought. He said there's a record attached to it. If she finds out, we won't get anything." That was the moment everything inside me shifted. I had spent 3 days weeping over what I thought was the theft of a memory. But now I realized this wasn't just about sentiment. This was about something bigger, something my husband left behind that I had never known existed. And the people I trusted had been trying to take it away before I ever discovered the truth hidden inside that ring. The next morning, I received a call that would change the course of everything. It was Mr. Thompson, the family jeweler who had been in business for over 40 years, the same man who helped my late husband choose that engagement ring decades ago. His voice was steady, but carried an urgency I had never heard before. "Margaret," he said, "I need you to come to the store right away. And please, come alone." My heart pounded as I hung up the phone. I didn't tell Eric or Vanessa. I simply grabbed my coat and left. When I arrived, Mr. Thompson locked the shop door behind me and gently placed the ring on a velvet cloth. The diamond was still beautiful, sparkling in the morning light, but his expression was grave. "When Vanessa brought this in," he began, "she asked to remove the inner band engraving to make room for her own initials. I told her I needed to authenticate the ring first." He turned the ring around and pointed to a barely visible seam inside the band. "This ring has a micro hinge," he said. "It's not just jewelry, it's a vault." My breath caught as he pressed a nearly invisible latch. The inner band popped open, revealing a thin, rolled piece of film tucked inside a protected chamber. My hands trembled as he carefully unrolled it. Inside was a tiny, recorded message, my husband's voice, preserved from decades ago, clear and steady. "If you are listening to this, it means the ring has been removed from Margaret's finger. My love, this ring is not only a symbol of our marriage, but also a legal key to our legacy. The bearer of this ring holds controlling interest in our investments, real estate, and trust accounts. If anyone takes this ring without your consent, it triggers a legal investigation." I stood frozen, tears gathering in my eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that my husband had protected me even after his death. Mr. Thompson placed a gentle hand on mine and said, "Your husband entrusted this to you. It was not meant for anyone else. And Margaret, there's more." He handed me a sealed envelope that had been hidden inside the inner lining of the ring box itself, one that Vanessa never thought to open. The letter inside was written in my husband's familiar handwriting. He explained that many years ago he placed a portion of his wealth and property into a private trust that could only be accessed by the lawful owner of the ring. He also warned me that if anyone attempted to take it by force or deceit, I should immediately contact attorney Grace Winters, who was instructed to act as executor of his final wishes. The trust would not only secure my financial future, but legally expose anyone who attempted to claim it without rightful ownership. As I read my husband's words, strength began to rise within me. Not the loud strength of anger, but the quiet strength of truth. For so long, I had let myself shrink in the presence of disrespect, believing that age meant I had no power. But now I knew that not only did I belong at the head of my family, my late husband had ensured it. I looked up at Mr. Thompson, my voice steady. "It's time to show them who this ring really belongs to." He nodded and dialed Attorney Winters. Within hours, she had arranged a mandatory family meeting at her office. But instead of fear, I felt calm, because the truth was no longer hidden. It was in my hand, protected by the man who had loved me beyond his last breath. As I left the jeweler's shop, ring secure on my finger once again, I no longer felt like a powerless widow. I felt like a woman stepping back into the legacy that was always mine, and I knew with absolute certainty that when my daughter-in-law and son walked into that attorney's office, they would no longer see me as weak or irrelevant. They would see me as the rightful keeper of everything they thought they had already taken. This was no longer a fight for dignity. It was the unveiling of truth, and I was ready. The attorney's conference room was quiet when I arrived, the kind of silence that carries tension just beneath the surface. I sat at the long mahogany table with my hands folded, my engagement ring back where it belonged, on my finger, glimmering softly under the morning light. A few minutes later, the door swung open, and in walked my son, Eric, and daughter-in-law, Vanessa. They were whispering urgently, their faces tight with anxiety. The moment Vanessa saw the ring on my finger, she stopped in her tracks. Her eyes widened, and she let out a short, shaky breath. "How did you—" she started, but before she could finish, Attorney Grace Winters entered the room with a file in her hand. "Thank you all for coming," she said calmly. "This meeting has been initiated due to a breach of asset security and unauthorized possession of protected property." Eric shifted nervously in his seat. Vanessa tried to regain control and said with a forced smile, "This is all unnecessary. The ring was going to be mine eventually. We're family." Grace looked directly at her. "Legally, family or not, that ring is not yours. And the moment you removed it from Margaret's hand without her consent, you triggered an automatic legal alert tied to Mr. Hale's estate." Vanessa's confident expression faltered, but she attempted one last defense. "We thought she didn't need it anymore. It's just jewelry." Grace opened the file and placed several documents on the table. Copies of the trust, the ring's registry, and the transcribed recording from the ring's hidden chamber. My husband's voice came through a speaker, clear as day. "To whoever holds this ring without lawful right, you are attempting to claim what is not yours. This ring is the key to my legacy, and its unauthorized removal shall be treated as attempted theft of my estate." The blood drained from Vanessa's face as the room fell into stunned silence. Eric stared at the document as if seeing his father's handwriting for the first time. Grace continued, "This ring is not only a symbol of marriage, but a legal device attached to the Hale Trust, which controls properties, investments, and accounts, totaling over $8 million. Vanessa gasped, unable to hide her shock. She had thought it was a simple diamond. She had no idea it was the cornerstone of the entire family's financial structure. Grace's voice remained firm. "Margaret is the sole beneficiary and controller of the trust until the day she dies. Only then does the secondary beneficiary inherit. And that person is not you, Vanessa. It is Olivia." Eric's head shot up. "Olivia?" he echoed in disbelief. Attorney Grace nodded. "Mr. Hale designated your daughter as the future heir because he believed she represented the continuation of family values. He explicitly stated that any spouse or in-law who attempts to take control or disrespect Margaret forfeits all rights to inheritance. Vanessa's mouth opened in outrage. That's ridiculous. You can't just give everything to a child. Grace met her eyes with calm authority. It has already been done. Legally. Irrevocably. My granddaughter Olivia, who had been quietly sitting at the end of the table, looked at me with wide, teary eyes. She suddenly realized why her grandfather always called her the keeper of the promise. Vanessa stood abruptly, knocking over her chair. You planned this! You tricked us! She shouted. I stayed calm and responded. This was never about tricking anyone. This was about protecting what your greed tried to take. Eric buried his face in his hands. He realized the magnitude of his silence and complicity. Grace then presented the final consequence. Due to the attempted theft of a secured asset and the triggering of legal protections, Vanessa, you are now formally removed from all inheritance claims and will no longer be allowed access to any financial accounts tied to this estate. Additionally, a restraining injunction will be filed, preventing you from harassing or attempting to remove Margaret from her property. Vanessa tried to protest, but Eric finally spoke, his voice broken, filled with shame. Stop, Vanessa. We were wrong. The power in the room shifted completely. No longer was I the quiet, aging widow who could be pushed aside. I was the rightful keeper of my husband's legacy. As the meeting ended, Vanessa stormed out, but not with the ring she thought she had stolen. Instead, she walked away with the knowledge that her own entitlement had destroyed every chance she had of controlling this family. Eric turned to me with tears in his eyes and said, Mom, I should have protected you. I looked at him gently and replied, Protection is not in what you say, but in what you choose to stand up for. As we left the office, Olivia slipped her small hand into mine and whispered, Grandpa would be proud of you. For the first time in a long time, I felt that truth deep in my soul. This was not just a victory. It was justice. Walking out of that attorney's office, I felt the weight of years lifting off my shoulders. The sun was shining, the air was cool, and for the first time since my husband's passing, I no longer felt alone in this world. I looked down at the ring on my finger, and it wasn't just gold and diamond. It was truth, loyalty, and the living heartbeat of a promise my husband made to me long ago, that even after death, his love would protect me. When we arrived home, the silence in the house was different. It wasn't cold or cruel anymore. It was transitioning, shedding layers of pride, ego, and entitlement. Vanessa, realizing her control had been shattered, packed her bags in a rage. She slammed the door as she left, but for once I wasn't shaken. Sometimes God removes people so your life can breathe again. Eric stayed behind, sitting on the couch with his head in his hands. He didn't say a word at first. Eventually, he stood, walked over to me, and knelt just like he did when he was a child asking for forgiveness. Mom, he whispered, voice cracking, I forgot who taught me what love is. I let someone else decide your worth when that was never their decision to make. Tears pooled in his eyes, not from embarrassment, but from awakening. I placed my hand on his cheek and told him, Redemption isn't found in perfection. It's found in change. From that moment, our relationship began to heal, not with grand gestures, but with quiet moments of respect. He began making me tea in the mornings, sitting with me in the evenings, listening to stories of his father with new understanding. He no longer saw me as an aging obligation, but as a living connection to the roots that gave him strength. My granddaughter Olivia blossomed during this time. She would hold my hand as we walked through the garden and tell me, Grandma, I want to be the kind of woman who carries her family with love, not pride. I knew then that my husband's legacy was not just saved in documents or trusts. It was alive in the heart of our granddaughter. The house itself began to change too. We opened the curtains and let the light in. We took down the expensive decor Vanessa had insisted on and replaced it with family photos, quilts, and reminders of joy that cannot be bought. The kitchen once again smelled of fresh bread and cinnamon, the same way it did when my husband and I first bought our home. I started a weekly tradition that my husband and I used to do. Sunday dinners where everyone came together without phones, without pretense, just to share a meal and talk. At first, the seats were empty, but over time, neighbors, family friends, and even members of the church began to join. They didn't come because the house was beautiful. They came because the house had heart again. As the months passed, I decided not to hide what happened to me. I spoke at community events telling women and men, especially the elderly, that love is not measured by what you hand over, but by what you protect. I started a foundation in my husband's name, using a portion of the trust to help widows and seniors secure their legal rights against elder financial abuse. People began sending letters, saying my story had given them the strength to stand up against their own mistreatment. Some even reclaimed stolen heirlooms and property using the same legal protections I taught them about. I realized that my suffering had become my testimony, and my testimony had become someone else's survival. But the greatest moment came one quiet evening as I sat on the porch with Olivia under the soft gold light of sunset. She placed her head on my shoulder and said, "Grandma, one day when I get married, I want my engagement ring to be a symbol of love that lasts a lifetime, just like yours." She wasn't talking about wealth or diamonds. She was talking about legacy. And that is when I finally understood. Life will always test your value. But what determines your worth is not how others treat you. It is how you stand when they try to take your dignity. My story did not end in tears. It ended in triumph. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that stands firm in truth, wrapped in peace. If this story touched your heart, make sure you subscribe to my channel and comment where you're watching from. Your voice matters, and someone out there needs to hear your story too.